Once upon a time there was a very nasty person who lived in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, who was found guilty of the murder of Teresa Halbach. His case went to court, he was sentenced by a judge and will spend the rest of his life in prison, and I helped to put him there. I am of course reading the memoir of Andy Colburn, because that's really about all that he can remember, and that's certainly what the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department would hope is going to be the case. Now, Robert joined in 1983, so neither he or Andy Colburn had anything to do with the framing of Steve back in 1985. That was purely the work and the efforts of Tom and Dennis and Jean the pencil and the lovely Judy de Verbiage. One of the things that the police department tried to do was to intervene by saying that you've got the wrong guy, but that didn't help. Interestingly, I actually sent an email to Nick Reamer of the police department just under 2 years ago, and said could he not send a couple of his officers round to the sheriff's department and arrest the ones who had planted evidence and lied under oath. He actually replied back with the fact that he did not have any jurisdiction and to be careful, which I took as a mild threat, but which was rather amusing for me. I come from an interesting background, and that certainly didn't bother me in the slightest. Both myself, Steve, and Robert all share an interest in cars. I'm actually a fully qualified mechanic myself, and industrial language and colourful characters you get aplenty when you're working in the motor trade. Now, unfortunately for Robert, what he did do was in 2006 he accepted a poisoned chalice. He didn't know he was doing that. He thought he was fulfilling his career by becoming the sheriff, so that he could spend his time in his office trying to avoid journalists, and sat busy polishing his big shiny badge. Unfortunately though, Making a Murderer blew up under his leadership of the sheriff's department. So he's therefore, unfortunately, he's the captain of the ship. He's got people below him that will that could potentially try and put the blame on him. He's got people above him who will definitely turn around and say, well, it's Manitowoc, he's in charge. And certainly when things start to go further downhill, when things continue to deteriorate to the point where eventually the citizens of Manitowoc realise that they've been duped and lied to, then it's Robert that's going to be there's going to be a lot of anger towards Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, and it's invariably going to be the head of that department that is going to take the brunt of their wrath and anger. I tried to warn him. I would often go 2 or 3 weeks between contacting him and via phone, and in between I would send him emails, newspaper cuttings, etc. One of the things I sent him was about a friend of mine who, basically to cut a long story short, despite the fact that he received an award for bravery for saving a woman's life, that counted not one iota when his ex-wife, who was also a policewoman, got him charged with assault. It went to the High Court, and they managed to get some other partners to come and say yes, he's abusive, and he ended up he's currently doing 12 years. The point being that if he basically did a Robert Herman and just denied anything. Everything was being made up. And I think what he should have done is he should have said, look, I realise I might have overstepped the mark, because he was definitely made an example of. And I think, in fairness, I think Robert kind of got the gist of what I was trying to say to him. As I say, if not as a friend, and then as an enemy. But I've always been honest with Robert, and I've never lied to him. And as I say, we often got on quite well. There was a couple of times when, as I say, we shared a joke. I remember once commenting on the fact that if and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Stephen, but if it was a choice of going out for a pint under normal circumstances with the likes of Robert compared to Stephen, because of obviously our social backgrounds, it might be I might tend to enjoy more of say Robert's company than somebody like Steve, who is of a different sort of social circle. And his reaction to that was, "Wow, where did that come from?" I said, "Well, Robert, I'm just being honest. I'm not here to give you a load of nonsense. As I say, this case has touched everyone, but it doesn't have any bearing on me at all. I'm 4,000 miles away. It's not a case of anything I say or do is going to make the slightest bit of difference. But certainly, what you do and say could transform you from zero to hero." So basically, that's what I've tried to do, is to say to him, look, things are going from bad to worse. And that's when he admitted that, at some point he'll have to speak with Zellner. Now, that could be construed that he's confident about the non-involvement of Manitowoc in any wrongdoing, and that he'll simply phone up and say, look, we're squeaky clean. What questions do you want answered? Well, if that was the case, of course, he could have contacted her ages ago and said, look, we've got nothing to hide, and that isn't the case. So I would suggest that there are parts of the jigsaw that Robert is certainly well aware of. However, moving on, and I do apologise if sometimes I do seem to skip from topic to topic. I am simply working on bullet points, so to Mark, I do apologise. It's trying to be conversationalist, and please forgive me. As I say, I look forward to viewing some of your videos in the future. That would be pleasant. So talking about contrast, certainly the media war was lost by Steve and Brendan and Jerry back in 2005, 6 and 7. Kathleen Zellner has completely reversed that, obviously with the help of Making a Murderer, to the extent where now only a handful of people still support the wrongful conviction of Stephen. I say the other contrast is how Robert, who potentially stands to lose such a huge amount, his fall from grace could be very very bad for him. And yet he's pleasant to speak to, polite, as I say, not a nasty word from him at all. It makes you wonder why people with less to lose have to have such ridiculous hatred. As I say, the case will not be based on things I say. The state will lose the case because of, obviously, the bullet was planted, the bones were planted, the key was planted, the blood was planted, there was perjury by various people. There was at the time a lack of Denny suspects. We now have 3. There's a whole load of Brady violations. There's no witnesses coming forward. This case is simply growing arms and legs. The case and the debate will not be based on whether I wear glasses, whether I wear a tie, a jacket, have a beard. It won't be based on my age, on whether I play the accordion or the guitar or the piano, or whether my pupils, how they play their accordion, their guitar or their piano, or what books I read, or the tone of my voice. Believe it or not, all of these items will not be considered as appropriate for either the state or Kathleen Zellner to discuss. However, when it comes to the haters, they do believe that whoever shouts loudest will prevail. Their whole purpose of being abusive is to try and make other people feel uncomfortable. That's not going to work. As I say, I've too interesting a background If you knew anything about me, yeah, I've been around a long time, and trust me, I've come across all sorts of characters. No, the problem is that when you start to get abusive, like you do, like some of them do, they completely lose the plot because they've lost the argument. And believe it or not, it's not going to depend on social media. It's not going to be based on anything that I say or anything that anybody either says in favour or against the case. It's going to be decided by Kathleen Zellner. And obviously, as I say, we do look forward to Making a Murderer #2 coming out, because it will just make things even clearer. Okie dokie, that's all I've time for today. Hope to see you again sometime soon. Bye for now.